Morning, everybody. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us for today's presentation. We're going to take a look at Infor Mingle and how this solution works with SyteLine, how it works with the Mongoose toolset. Providing today's presentation is James Willey. James is a member of the Infor platform technology team. This team has a single purpose, which is to bring technology to life. James started with a company called Cymix a number of years ago, continued on to Mapix, which many of you may recall Mapix, and then on to Infor. James has a career of 15 years in the enterprise. His background is from the ERP side of the house, first as a customer, and he went on to become an implementation consultant, and then working with all of the new technologies at Infor. We're pleased to have him taking us through this peek at Mingle, and at that, I'm going to turn things over to James.
All right, thanks a lot. And first off, everybody, thank you for having me today. It's a great pleasure. Today I get the unique opportunity to show you something a little different, and something that has been built for some very specific purposes. And the first thing I'll tell you is a lot of what we're going to talk about is really geared towards what is the end user's role in an organization, how can we improve their world, their life, their ability to execute, to work faster, smarter, better, and also to do things like help others retain information and knowledge so that more can benefit from it. So the backstory is I'm going to talk a little bit about the different pieces that make up the technology story as it relates to SyteLine. And that really, of course, starts off with this notion that, you know, in the end, how people interact with the enterprise system, like SyteLine, which is where I started my life. I actually started on Cymix V4. But in the end, you know, you think about an ERP, thousands of tables, in SyteLine's case, tons of IDOs. The number one thing it has going for it is information. And the most important thing is that people drive information. People are the ones that enter it, transact it, hopefully don't put post-it notes that tell you how to do it. But it's a very structured world that often has a very unstructured conversation around it, meaning that things happen outside the enterprise every single day. We know they happen. They happen via link, phone, communicator, IM, Skype, you name it, or we all know and love the wonderful email. So our goal was to really say, you know what, we're going to embrace that with SyteLine, and SyteLine needs a little bit of help, and luckily SyteLine has this really cool tool under the cover called Mongoose. And then we really looked at four major, I'll call them pillars, in terms of why do we need something and how do we make it work. And we have this notion of the real enterprise, which we have applications that surround us every day. We have, of course, our ERP that does most of the lifting, but we have other tools that we need. We have business intelligence, we have service, we have quality, we have all these different objects or things that are out there that we need to bring information together in one place. The other thing that's really important is we have people. Probably the most important thing is we have lots of people that are part of the organization, and then how do we embrace them in terms of any process. Something new and unique is this notion of something called an object. When we think about inside of an enterprise, especially in manufacturing, there are things that are part of our ecosystem inside of a plant, the four walls, that drive or are critical to overall business operations and how we're successful moving forward. You can think of something as simple as an air compressor that runs an entire production line. When it's going to come down for maintenance and service, it'd be really nice to know that's going to happen, and then have it in a way that everybody gets notified, not just the people that are logging in that ERP every day. So that's important. And then lastly, I already mentioned the data. So the backstory is, I'm going to start off. I am going to tell this story. You guys do know, I think all know, that SyteLine 9 is out the door, but I'm going to be able to show you this. I'm going to be demoing a little bit of SyteLine 9, but I'm also going to be talking to where you're at in the 8 series and how does that apply to this. But it is there. But under the covers, if you don't know, there is a tool set that actually helps us do things with SyteLine that gives us the ability to bend, flex, bend without breaking the actual enterprise, and allows us to do things very quickly, more transparently, without writing customization or modification of code. That, of course, is Infor Mongoose. Now, what's happened along the way is, as we've done things like Mingle and all of the integration practices that we're doing, we've also done things with Mongoose to change its world in terms of the end user's experience needs to be uplifted. So for that reason, you're going to see a little bit different styling of what Mongoose is doing, geared towards the end user. Mongoose is also doing something uniquely. I'm going to show you live. It'll be easier. Something called contextual use. It is plumbed and used for Mingle, and I'll show you what that means as well. Also, Mongoose is now allowing us to go pretty much anywhere. You'll notice, you guys don't know, but I'm going to be demoing everything you're going to see with SyteLine on a Mac. So a little bit of Safari, so fun. And then I'm going to show you a little bit about how all of this is automatically plumbed with Ion, and how does Ion, the word, sort of feed into this notion of Mingle, SyteLine, and all these worlds come together. And hopefully, I'm going to show you a little bit about value in terms of some pre-based things that we've built. This is just what is the feed, and I'm going to show it to you. It's easier to do it, but Mingle is more than just a place you log into. It's sort of like your home, away from home. It's where you can start your day, and you can see all sorts of different types of conversations, information. And I'm going to give you some examples in just a minute. The four major things that we're going to cover real quick when I do this demo and talk through it is this notion of context, collaboration, the graph, and the process. And I'm just going to go real quick through each of these to give you an idea of what hopefully I'm going to cover. The notion of contextual information is probably one of the unique drivers behind what Infor Mingle is and does, and how does it become an adjective as part of the SyteLine experience. It basically says that while I'm working in my enterprise application, I need to bring other pieces of information that are relevant to me, the end user, live. So I don't have to stop, go, navigate, dream about where I'm going to go get it, go Google something, go do whatever that is. So if you think about all these little icons, and they all have meaning, these are all pre-canned elements that we actually ship with the product that goes out with SyteLine every day. Something as simple as inline video playing for content, so you can then start to think about use cases around having in-context videos on training information. We have language translation tools. We have embedded business intelligence, so that while you're looking at a given screen or an object, you can actually see the relevant information that you classically would have to go somewhere else to get it. We're going to bring it all in one place. That's context. I'll show it to you in action that makes a little bit more sense. Collaboration, a lot of people use the word social. I like to be careful of that. Of course, every enterprise is very, very social. But I like to think of what we're doing with Mingle as much more about business collaboration or process collaboration. And if you think about the experiences we do inside of an enterprise, we tend to think about things like budgeting, doing campaigns, new product introductions, engineering changes, and we tend to think of those as bigger processes that have lots of ERP functional process steps. So is there a way for me to embrace, grab, and do with Mingle so I can capture the conversation? And I do that for a number of reasons. The first reason, of course, is logical, is if I can get away from storing information in 5 different silos, or I call it storing information in the shadows, whether it's email or phone or me talking to Joe one-on-one about an individual product or an introduction, that's great. Joe and I happen to know about it, but if something happens to me, or more importantly Joe, down the road, I won't be able to get it back. So this is about embracing a conversation, putting it in one place, and then you know what? If I do that, I have the ability to call that information back up. So the good example I love to give people to give an idea of how this works, in the SyteLine experience, we often think of a really fun report called the PPV, the Purchase Price Variance Report. And if you guys are out there, know that you tend to run those on Fridays. We used to run them on Green Bar, and hopefully there wasn't too many green bars on it. But if we had a lot of PPV out there over a 10% tolerance, whatever, the purchase order, you know what? We tend to then pick up the phone, we call the buyer and say, why are we 10% out of tolerance? But what if we would have sent that in a social collaborative way where we asked Joe, the buyer, to say, why were you out? What was happening? What did the vendor say? Could we have embraced the vendor in the conversation? And then next week when we have another PPV, we'd be able to recall instantly what happened before. This has happened 5 times previously. So part of this is about capturing. Another part is learning from yesterday so we improve tomorrow. All of those things are Mingle key objectives. Again, designed just to streamline what the end user is going to do, say, and embrace. All right. The other thing Mingle's going to do quite a bit differently is this notion of, I call it the true enterprise. You can think of something called a graph, and if you're out there in the social world, and we've all looked at some of the tools we play with every day, so if you've played with LinkedIn, Facebook, all of these different social tools, underlying there's this thing called a graph, which is, it's really saying, what is the web? What is the connectivity of people? we've taken it just a step further with Mingle and SyteLine. SyteLine does a great job of having all these critical objects in it, whether it's machines that are part of resources that are inside of bills and material. But what if those things could actually come to life? And the example would be is I'm the production scheduler, I run line 1, I have 5 guys that work for me, whatever, they're shop supervisors. If I knew everything that they were doing, as well as the machines were doing, as well as how they were running, jobs complete and all that stuff, and all of that is what we call the real graph, meaning Joe, the supervisor, does know what the machine's doing. He might have to go walk around, look at it, and talk to it, but that's how the organization truly works. So part of what we do in the experience is try to embrace what the true graph is, and why that's important is because we want to bring those objects to life as well. If we know what the run rate is of a given machine, we know when something's wrong, we know when the machine goes down, the job's been stopped, and all that can happen in line. We can actually have conversations about it happening, and more importantly, we can hopefully find ways to improve it so it doesn't happen again. So I'm going to show you a little bit of what that is as well, to give you the backstory of what it is. The last piece, the major tenet, of course, is this notion of processes. Inside of Mongoose and SyteLine is this notion of something called events and workflows, and we're all familiar with what a workflow is. A workflow generally says, I'm going to start a process, I'm going to have a yes, no, I'm going to navigate to something, I'm going to do something, I'm going to suspend a record, and then, oh, by the way, it'll keep going. We're going to do the same type of thing that we'd call that meat and potatoes, which is process control. But then we're going to insert this notion of conversation along with a business process. So that's the other thing Mingle's going to do for us. So we can take what I call a structured process, and we can now join in the unstructured conversation that happens in embracing with that person. And the other thing we're going to do is, with Mingle, we're going to jump outside the 4 walls of the ERP, and we can talk to people that aren't classically part of the enterprise. And that happens quite a bit. You know, we think about how many people in our organization are what we call those power users that know how to make everything happen. This is also about saying there's a whole bunch of people that are actually critical to our overall business operations, and Mingle helps us bring those people into the conversation. All right. So that's what ION does under the covers, and I'm going to show you a little bit about, I'm going to demystify the word ION for you and show you how ION is critical to what SyteLine does and how Mongoose, ION, and SyteLine work hand in hand to bring objects and things to life. So I'm going to show you that. And then I'm also going to show you how Mingle shows a user a totally different mindset of terms of what actionable data is, and we've all used those terms, managed by exception. I'm going to show you a little bit differently of how that happens in the Mingle universe working with SyteLine. And then lastly, the real quick recap on ION, of course, is we think about it. I'm going to show you how SyteLine's doing the work. But you know, the ERP is already doing the heavy lifting, meaning SyteLine ERP already does the job of when I save something, I publish something out, all this is happening, and I'm going to show you what we've done with that to make the SyteLine world and Mingle world a little bit more attractive and more value added immediately. So hopefully that's going to come to life in just a couple minutes. And then this is just a recap of what we've talked about. I can take a really structured process in the ION world, and now I can join it with Mingle together. And then I'm going to show you real quick some content. This is something new a lot of people haven't seen yet. So if you went out to your support site today, we pre-built a lot of content in support of SyteLine working with Mingle. And what we've done is 25 predefined alerts and tasks and things like that that allow you to get it up and running very, very quickly so you can see value right out of the gate. And at the bottom right, we have a group of people we call the factory, where they're actually taking a lot of the cool stuff that SyteLine's doing, and then we're just building on it. And the idea is if you can build proof points in terms of how the technology can come to life to solve business problems, it makes it a little bit more easy, you know, to gain that success. So we'll go through that. All right. So that was the real quick PowerPoint. That's all I'm going to do on PowerPoint, and hopefully you guys can still see my desktop. You guys okay? Joe, can you see my desktop? I think he's there.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. Yep, I see it as well.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure. All right, and the real quick thing I want to do is I'm going to start you off. I'm just queuing up my demo here real quick. You guys hang in with me 1 second. All right, so I'm in the Mingle feed, and the first thing I wanted to say is I'm starting you at home. Again, this is where I start my day. The first thing I'm showing you at the top is this notion of these balls. These balls actually show me different flavors of what the Mingle experience can be like. We're all different users, and we need to recognize that. Some of us like what I call this Uber feed with everything happening all in one place. We can have that experience. If I want to see just the conversations, I can do that, and I can actually see who's talking the most, who's the top contributors, who people are saying they like, dislike, what are the top trending objects. I'll come back to what an object is in just a minute. I mentioned it earlier. And then we can see a lot of, by functional areas, where is the conversation originating from, who's doing the most. And a lot of this is coming from what you would think of classically in the SyteLine world as our user groups, whether it's procurement or purchasing versus customer service, those types of logical groups you would have inside of this experience with SyteLine as well. You also then can look at something as simple as all the tasks that I have assigned. And Melody Oliver, who's the VP of Marketing, does not have any tasks. She does have some notifications hitting, but she does have some alerts. And in this example, she has an alert coming in that the item D10X, whatever it is, this is actually a golf club company, by the way. She's actually got an alert here that someone has started a closeout. She can actually just hit this little details button, and this is where we start to show business process a little differently. She can see all of the different objects that are being passed from Ion and SyteLine directly to the Mingle feed. In this example, it's showing her what it is, who it is, where it came from, what location it's coming out of, meaning site in the SyteLine vernacular. And then she can make this decision to assign it to herself, meaning she's going to take the alert and do something with it. She can assign it to someone else. Or if she's really not sure what's going on, she can simply click on this blue button. The blue button is a universal term here for drill backing, and I can dynamically navigate directly to the record in question, and I can close loop it. So what we've done is we're still in the Mingle world. You'll notice that SyteLine itself is running inside of a frame inside of Mingle. And then the next thing you're going to notice on the right-hand side is the next word I was talking about, something called context. So what happens in the context world is I'm looking at a collection of items on the left, and if you guys in the SyteLine world, you're used to this view of what I call the MultiPart View form, the grid on the left and the form on the right. All that's happened now in Mongoose 9, if I can get this to work, we've introduced this concept of grids, and if we think about tiling now, so this notion of tiles to give a much more easier way for people to see a summary of information instead of having half the columns being hidden out of sight. So this is a new Mongoose 9 feature that's part of SyteLine 9. But you can see those sitting there, the information, and you'll notice context. I'm going to show you something for those developers on the phone today, but if you look at what I'm doing now, these are a bunch of icons that can run in what we call overlay mode, which is where it's popping over on top of the UI. I'm going to show you this little tool called the Context Viewer. This is what was provided to you so you can understand and see what Mongoose and SyteLine are pushing out of the UI for others to use, consume, and benefit from. Now what I mean is if I look at this individual item for this driver, you'll notice that the window changes dynamically on the fly. So whenever I'm in SyteLine, I'm actually pushing something out of it called the Infor Business Context. And in that, I'm sending things out of demo is actually the site I'm in. The Infor Item Master is what the thing that I'm looking at. Here's the Infor Item Master record. Here's the name of it, what entity or site database it came from. And in the SyteLine world, it's very important for multi-site. And then you can look at other things and other types of information, including things like warehouse. And all of those keys are passed out of SyteLine so that we can do other things with it. The context viewer is really a technical type of thing to play with, but if you're doing your own things in Mongoose and you want to push more information out, you can. So let's say you wanted to build something for vendor rating or whatever else, you can do it. This right-hand side is now an entire collection of gadgets, let's put it that way, where you can do things that I can bring information live. So I'm going to play around with this one here. So I'm going to play around with something called embedded, in-context business intelligence. You'll notice now I'm looking at this record, and I'm actually going to be able to see the safety stock. If I go in and change the record, you're going to notice that the actual information now is changing dynamically based on what I'm looking at. This is the context coming out and being surfaced into another application. In this case, Infor Context is actually a little tool called Application Studio that works with Mongoose and Ion and other things to actually surface business intelligence in line with the experience. You'll also notice I'm getting tons of information in line in SyteLine that work with this object. How many have been transferred out, what's the safety stock, how much has been sold, what is the on-hand balances for each of the given goods. Now, some would say that's not a big deal. In the item case, not a great deal because, of course, you do have your inline graphing and objects here. But something where I have to look at multiple warehouses, I can't really see here. I used to have to navigate through an inventory tree control, or more importantly, I would have to click into something else and go look at that record. And you'll notice that when I do that, everything will change live and online based on what I'm doing when I'm doing it. All right, so the ERP experience works pretty much the same as what you're used to. You just now have added tools that wrap around you. Across the top, you'll notice the little factory icon. That's my SyteLine icon in this instance. Of course, you can change that to whatever you want it to be. This is a collection of applications. Now, in this case, we're the Ion Golf Company. We build golf clubs, so we have lots of types of information, whether it's graphs, physical assets from fixed assets that I need to worry about. But we can actually have more and more applications. And the important thing is I can put multiple applications or websites or whatever types of information in this same experience world so that the user, again, doesn't have to go navigate somewhere else to go get it. So something as crazy as, because we happen to sponsor a lot of golfing professionals, if I wanted to go navigate to it, I can actually bring all of that information in line. I also could bring in different types of things like Twitter and social objects, Yelp, what are local area things that are really important to me. I could show all of those different objects in line inside of one space working right next to SyteLine hand in hand. And guess what? When I go back to SyteLine, I don't lose any of the previous information that I had. So I can do that. So now let's talk a little bit about collaborating. So if we went back to home, if I go to my feed, I'll look at my feed, I get it. I can do really cool things, very simple. I can do @IRA, as IRA happens to be the guy in inventory control. I know that. I can just say @IRA, I think smart enough to do it straight for me. I can type messages directly. Can you please help with inventory, right? Inventory on the new drivers, whatever. I have the ability to add dynamic attachments in line, and I also have the ability to do something kind of unique. I can actually send this message directly to tagged users and groups, which means these are people that have the blue boxes that I put in the message itself, and it will go directly to them. I can send it to my colleagues that I'm connected to, which are all these people on the left-hand side, right? Or I can send it publicly, which means shouting it off the rooftop or in the theater. Or I can pick groups and see the groups that I belong to. In the case Melody Oliver is marketing, she'd be able to share it directly with them. So a lot of casual business conversations happen just this way. So what if we could do this and eliminate 2 or 3 conference calls a week? That'd be wonderful, right? So you can see that. You'll also notice different types of collaborations that are happening. You can see where IRA actually shared something directly to the feed, and you'll notice all these blue marks. And these blue marks are really the context that's being shared from the application. And I'm going to show you how this magic happens. And then there's also this notion of objects and beautiful pictures, and you can do all of that. You can actually share screen images. I'm going to show you how you do that directly in the feed. But the important thing is you can do dynamic collaboration of not only what you're talking about, you can do office documents, everything that you're used to in the SyteLine space. You now have another tool to extend that conversation and then make it happen. I'm going to show you something pretty cool that makes it happen. Really. So Melody's going to sit back and say, I need some help. I need to know what I'm going to do. She does it. She sends something to IRA. IRA gets it. And you'll notice IRA actually did something in SyteLine where he changed the control code for obsolescence, and he's shutting down the old driver. He got an alert, looking at it. She decides she's going to navigate to it. She's going to navigate directly to it to go look at it. And if she goes and looks at it, it's going to open up the record for me. And you guys are familiar with this. I can see the obsolescence code and everything's filled in, right? She still has the ability to come over here and do all the stuff you guys are used to. actions, and she wants to, let me think, form, right? You can do the full export to Excel, take the information, and then share it right back in. But what I wanted to show you is how did Ira do what he did. So let's say she's looking at this and she has a question. So pretend you're on an order, you have a pricing problem, whatever. All you have to do on the very top of the screen is this notion of share. This little share icon exists on all of these objects, but it also exists with SyteLine. And this is where it gets cool. So I'm looking at this item. I'm going to hit the share button, and I'm going to allow this. That's a security thing. And what's going to happen is it's going to come in with all this cool information. I showed you what context was. Now this is where it becomes important. Here's the Infor accounting demo, the site I'm in, the item master I'm playing with. All that information is live. And SyteLine is already providing all the drill back of the item master information of what it is. And then this other cool little icon is for following objects. I'm going to show you in just a minute what that means, but you get the idea of all the heavy lifting of all this typing, all the stuff we would have done in email or in phone is gone away. I can push it all directly in it. So I can come in here and say, please help, right? I'm going to do at Ira. I'm going to send it right to Ira, and it's going to hit that. I'm going to let it fly. And then I'm going to do this really cool thing is, this is my favorite. I'm just going to add a screenshot. That's how simple it is. It dynamically takes a screenshot of whatever I'm looking at on the screen live. If you wanted to open up that image, draw a circle on it, do whatever you want, you can. And then when I share that information, it's actually going to dynamically share it to the feed. Now, on the right-hand side, I can view all of this world just that way. Here's what I just shared. Here's the information. I can see it, the attachments, what did I do. Here's the context of all the information that happened. Please help Ira. You get the idea. So I never even have to leave SyteLine. I can sit up in there and go back to the main feed and look at it there if I wish to and see the conversation I just started. I also can experience it there. All right. Last thing I really wanted to show you, then we're going to open it up for some questions for you guys, is this uniqueness called following. You notice down here that it's blank. On purpose, I'm going to try something new here. I'm going to come over here and just for fun to show you how this works. We all are used to keywords like item master. You just start typing and it does it. I'm just going to do everything with a D just so I can start it. These are all the objects that SyteLine has been working with in the D series. And these happen to be all of the drivers that we manufacture at Ion Golf and where they're at. So I can see all of that information in one place. And this is kind of a unique thing. You notice how I have the drill backs. You guys remember purple means drill back to the source information. But this is now where Melody can look at a different way of looking at ERP data and ERP transactions and events. I can come in and say, wow, which one of these really makes sense? I'm going to click on this one. And it shows me the inventory positions of where they're at. I can click on that. And then I can also drill backwards and see all the different locations, all the things that are in the distribution warehouse. I can do it. The important thing is, as I'm self-discovering things, if I wanted to follow an object, all I have to do is click on the little blue circle. And what that means is now that the object's being followed, if I go back to my feed, I'm now following the customer party master or the customer record in customer 7. Now what this means is anytime someone does a change to that customer, and there's a couple permissions here to make this thing happen, but the general idea is if I have permissions in SyteLine, I can drill back to whatever the system is going to be emoting out to me. So think of this as like a live audit trail of the entire enterprise. If someone shifts, changes an address, whatever it is, I can be notified. Now, some people would say that's kind of crazy. But what if I had 5 critical customers that I'm worried about? What if I had that big customer that represents 35% of my business? If I had one place to actually track it, find it, I want to know if anyone's touched it or if the system's touched it, if there's a late shipment. I want all of those alerts and tasks to be funneled through me in one place. That's another thing Mingle and SyteLine can help you do now. So that is it. So you get the idea. That's a really quick show of what it is. You have all the classical things you would expect to, where Melody can look at what her profile is. She can control what she sees, how she sees it, how does she get notified, what type of notifications she gets, what is the format of the messaging that comes to her. She gets an email summary once whatever week, day, hour, whatever she decides to choose, that also gives her information. She also has the ability to view this thing on the road. So if you want to view it on the iPad or the Mingle Feed on a phone, you can do that as well. So you can see information in real time based on where you're at and when you need it. That's the other advantage that we're going to do. So again, it's really about looking at all the different types of conversations that exist and then bringing them all together in one place, whether it's something simple as an alert for something that went wrong or hopefully went right would be a great alert. It's dynamic collaborations between me and my coworkers. So maybe I do have that pricing committee call every Thursday. Why not create a group, actually have all the conversations live in time based on the ERP world? And then you know what? The cool thing is if I ever want to go back in life and search that type of thing, I can go ahead and say, show me anytime we've talked about closeout, here's the 2 conversations, here's the last item in terms of when we did it. I now have the full history all in one place across all the users. And more importantly, users when they were here, when they worked here, even when they left, we store that information and keep it for historical fun, which is also very, very important, we know, in any enterprise conversation.